You see, the most powerful force shaping your future is not motivation, it's not inspiration, it's not even opportunity. It is identity, and identity is quietly formed by the smallest things you do every single day. Most people wake up and think their life will change when something big happens. When they get the promotion, when they lose the weight, when they finally feel confident, but life rarely changes that way. It changes in inches, not miles. It changes through habits so small they seem almost unimportant in the moment. Every action you take is casting a vote for the type of person you are becoming. When you choose to read 10 pages instead of scrolling aimlessly, you are not just reading. You are voting to become a learner. When you choose to exercise for 20 minutes, you are not just sweating. You are voting to become disciplined. When you choose to keep your word on something small, you are not just being responsible. You are voting to become a person of integrity. And here's the powerful part. Identity is not built in one dramatic moment. It is built in repetition. You don't wake up one morning confident. You become confident after keeping promises to yourself over and over again. You don't suddenly become successful. You become successful after hundreds of small decisions that most people ignore. The reason small habits are so powerful is because they don't just change what you do, they change how you see yourself. If you tell yourself you're not a reader, but you read 10 pages a day for 30 days, something shifts. You begin to say, maybe I am a reader. If you tell yourself you're not disciplined, but you wake up early for 30 days straight, something changes internally. You begin to say, maybe I am disciplined. And once your identity changes, your standards change. When you see yourself as healthy, you don't negotiate with junk food as easily. When you see yourself as focused, you don't entertain distractions as freely. When you see yourself as reliable, you don't break promises casually. Your habits shape your identity, and your identity shapes your destiny. Now, let me give you something simple but powerful. Success is not about doing extraordinary things once in a while. It's about doing ordinary things extraordinarily well every day. Most people underestimate the small because they can't see immediate results. You don't see muscles after one workout. You don't see wealth after one deposit. You don't see wisdom after reading one chapter, so they quit. But what they don't understand is that habits are like seeds planted underground. For a while, nothing appears to be happening. But beneath the surface, roots are forming, and roots determine the height of the tree. If you build the identity of someone who keeps going, even when results are invisible, you will eventually see results that are undeniable. Another mistake people make is waiting until they feel ready. They say, when I feel confident, I'll start. No. You start and confidence follows. Action creates identity, not the other way around. You don't think your way into a new life. You act your way into a new life. Small habits remove the pressure of perfection. You don't have to transform your entire world overnight. You don't have to read 50 books this year. Start with 10 pages a day. You don't have to train like an athlete. Start with 20 minutes. You don't have to save thousands immediately. Start with a small percentage. Because what you're really building is not the outcome. You're building the person capable of the outcome. And the person you become is always more important than the results you achieve. If you chase results without changing identity, the results won't last. But if you change identity, results become inevitable. Think about it this way. Every day, you are either reinforcing an old identity or constructing a new one. Every time you procrastinate, you reinforce the identity of someone who delays. Every time you follow through, you reinforce the identity of someone who executes. It's subtle, it's quiet, but it is powerful. Your life right now is the sum total of your daily habits. If you want a different life, you don't need a different dream. You need different daily behavior, and here is the good news. You don't need to be extreme, you need to be consistent. Small habits seem insignificant, but repeated daily, they become unstoppable forces. They slowly eliminate self-doubt because you're proving something to yourself every day. They slowly build momentum because progress, even small progress, fuels belief. And belief changes everything, so if you want to change your life forever, don't start by asking, what big move should I make? Start by asking, what small habit can I commit to every single day? Because the small things you do daily are quietly creating the person you will be tomorrow. And when you change who you are, you change everything. Now let's talk about something that separates the dreamers from the doers. Discipline, not the loud kind, not the dramatic kind, the quiet, daily discipline that nobody applauds. We all have goals. That's not unusual. Everyone wants to be healthier, everyone wants more money, everyone wants respect, everyone wants freedom. Goals are common. What's rare is the discipline required to make them real. A goal without discipline is simply a wish. You can write your goals in a beautiful journal, you can repeat them every morning, you can visualize them. But if your daily habits don't support them, they remain fantasies. Discipline is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. And that bridge is built one plank at a time. It's built when you wake up on time, even when you don't feel like it. It's built when you finish the task, even when it becomes boring. It's built when you say no to something easy in order to say yes to something meaningful. Discipline is rarely dramatic. In fact, most of the time it feels inconvenient. That's why so few people embrace it. The pain of discipline weighs ounces, the pain of regret weighs tons. Let me explain something simple. Every day, you experience two types of pain, the pain of doing what you should do, or the pain of wishing you had done it. The first one is small and temporary, the second one compounds over years. When you choose to exercise today, it may feel uncomfortable for 30 minutes. When you choose not to exercise for 5 years, the consequences are much heavier. When you choose to save a small amount of money today, you may feel restricted for a moment. When you choose not to save for 10 years, you may feel trapped. Discipline protects your future, and here's what's powerful about small disciplines. They build trust with yourself. Every time you say you're going to do something and you follow through, you strengthen your self-respect. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you weaken it. Over time, that internal reputation becomes your reality. If you cannot trust yourself in small things, how will you trust yourself in big things? Discipline is not punishment. It's self-respect in action. Many people misunderstand discipline. They think it means intensity. It doesn't. It means consistency. You don't have to wake up at 4 in the morning to be disciplined. You just have to wake up when you said you would. You don't have to work 18 hours a day. You just have to use your hours wisely. Small daily disciplines are far more powerful than occasional bursts of effort. Motivation comes and goes, feelings rise and fall, but discipline remains when emotions disappear. That's why it becomes the foundation of lasting success. You see, the reason discipline changes your life is because it changes your standards. When you raise your standards for what you tolerate from yourself, your results begin to rise automatically. If you no longer tolerate laziness, productivity increases. If you no longer tolerate excuses, responsibility increases. If you no longer tolerate mediocrity, excellence begins to appear. And here's the interesting part. Discipline in one area of life spills into others. When you become disciplined with your health, you begin to feel stronger mentally. When you become disciplined with your time, you become more disciplined with your finances. When you become disciplined with your words, your relationships improve. It's a ripple effect, but remember, this discipline doesn't feel important in the moment. Skipping one workout doesn't seem like a big deal. Overspending once doesn't seem serious. Procrastinating one day feels harmless. But success and failure are both the result of small, repeated actions. The danger is never the big mistake. The danger is the small compromise repeated daily. That's why discipline must become a habit, not an event. And here's something powerful. You don't need massive discipline to change your life. You need simple, repeatable disciplines. Planning your day before it begins, keeping your workspace organized, reading a few pages, reviewing your goals. Finishing what you start. These seem ordinary. They are ordinary, but practiced daily, they create extraordinary outcomes. Discipline gives you control, and control gives you confidence. When you know you can rely on yourself, fear begins to shrink. Doubt begins to fade. You start to walk differently because you know you are building something solid underneath your feet. And let me tell you something else. Discipline is the ultimate form of freedom. It sounds like a contradiction, but it's true. The more disciplined you are with your time, the more free time you create. The more disciplined you are with money, the more financial freedom you build. The more disciplined you are with your health, the more physical freedom you experience. Indiscipline feels like freedom in the moment, but it leads to limitation. Discipline feels like restriction in the moment, but it leads to expansion. So if you want your life to change forever, don't focus only on big dreams. Focus on daily discipline. Focus on the small actions that align with the person you want to become. Because at the end of the day, success is not a mystery. It is simply a few disciplines practiced every single day. Let me share something with you that is simple but life-changing. Your mind is like a garden. Whether you plant anything or not, something will grow. If you neglect it, weeds will appear automatically. If you care for it intentionally, something valuable will grow in its place. What you feed grows. If you feed your mind doubt, it grows fear. If you feed it excuses, it grows weakness. If you constantly expose yourself to negativity, criticism, gossip, and small thinking, your life will begin to reflect exactly that. Not because you are incapable, but because you are being conditioned. Every day, you are programming your own thinking. The books you read, the conversations you entertain, the content you consume, the people you surround yourself with, all of it is shaping your perspective. And perspective determines decisions, decisions determine direction, direction determines destiny. That is why small mental habits are so powerful. Reading 10 pages a day may not feel dramatic. Listening to something educational during your commute may not feel extraordinary. Taking 5 minutes to practice gratitude may seem too simple to matter, but over time, these small mental disciplines reshape the way you think. And when you change the way you think, you change the way you live. You see, success is not first built in the bank account. It is built in the mind. Health is not first built in the body. It is built in the mind. Confidence is not first built in public. It is built in private thinking. If your internal dialogue is negative, your external results will eventually follow. If your internal dialogue is strong, patient, optimistic, and disciplined, your results will begin to mirror that strength. Guarding your mind is not weakness, it is wisdom. Be selective about who has influence over your thinking. Not everyone deserves access to your belief system. If you constantly surround yourself with people who complain, you will begin to see problems everywhere. If you surround yourself with people who take responsibility, you will begin to see solutions. It's subtle, it's gradual, but it's powerful. And here's something important. Your mind does not care whether information is good or bad. It simply absorbs what is repeated. That's why repetition is so powerful. If you repeat limitations to yourself long enough, they feel true. If you repeat possibility to yourself long enough, that begins to feel true. Small daily exposure compounds. Imagine reading just one good book per month. At the end of a year, that's 12 books. In 5 years, that's 60 books. Do you think you would think differently after 60 books? Of course you would. Your references would change. Your language would change. your expectations would change. And when your expectations rise, your standards rise. The same principle works in reverse. Feed your mind distraction, comparison, negativity, and mindless entertainment all day, every day, and watch what happens. Focus weakens, patience disappears, ambition fades. It doesn't happen overnight, it happens quietly. What you feed grows. Gratitude is another small habit that reshapes the mind. Taking a few minutes each day to acknowledge what is working in your life trains your brain to see opportunity instead of scarcity. It shifts you from victim thinking to ownership thinking, and ownership thinking changes everything. When you begin to believe that your choices matter, you stop blaming circumstances. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You start asking better questions. Instead of "why is this happening to me?" you begin to ask, "what can I learn from this?" That shift alone can alter the direction of your life. You cannot consistently act in a way that contradicts your dominant thoughts. If you believe you are incapable, your behavior will reflect hesitation. If you believe you are growing, your behavior will reflect effort. That's why mental habits must become intentional. Feed your mind ideas that stretch you. Feed it stories of perseverance. Feed it principles that build character. Feed it truth instead of trends. Over time, your thinking becomes stronger. Strong thinking leads to wise decisions. Wise decisions create steady progress, and steady progress builds confidence. Remember, the world outside you will always be noisy. There will always be distractions. There will always be opinions. There will always be negativity available. But you must decide what enters your garden, because if you don't plant something valuable, weeds will grow by default. Quality of your life is directly connected to the quality of your thoughts, and the quality of your thoughts is directly connected to what you consistently feed your mind. Small inputs repeated daily, massive impact over time, so be intentional, be selective, be disciplined about what you allow into your thinking. Because whatever you continuously feed in your mind will eventually show up in your life. Let me leave you with a principle that governs nearly everything in life, whether we notice it or not. It is the principle of compounding. Small actions, repeated consistently, create results that are either remarkably positive or painfully negative. There is no neutrality in daily behavior. Every day you are either building momentum or losing it. Consistency compounds everything. Most people underestimate the power of a single day. They say, "It's just one missed workout. It's just one bad spending decision. It's just one day without effort." And they're right. Once doesn't seem to matter, but life is not lived once. It's lived daily, and what you repeat becomes powerful. Think about money. A small amount invested regularly grows in ways that seem almost magical over time. Not because the amount was large, but because it was consistent. The same is true with knowledge. Read a little every day, and 5 years from now, you think differently than the crowd. Practice a skill a little every day, and a few years later you operate at a level that seems extraordinary to others. It's not extraordinary effort. It's ordinary effort applied consistently. You don't see the results at first. That's what discourages people. The first few weeks of working out show very little change. The first few months of saving money feel slow. The first few attempts at learning something new feel awkward, and because progress is invisible in the beginning, many people stop. But compounding doesn't reward intensity, it rewards patience. The results of consistency are delayed, but they are never denied. Imagine improving just 1% each day. That sounds insignificant, but 1% daily improvement over time transforms you into someone unrecognizable compared to where you began. Not because you made one giant leap, but because you refused to remain stagnant. Small improvements stack. Small efforts accumulate. Small disciplines multiply, and here's the other side of that truth. Neglect compounds too. One day of procrastination becomes a habit of delay. One careless financial decision becomes a pattern of poor management. One compromise in character becomes a standard of mediocrity. You don't fall apart overnight, you drift. And drifting is simply small negative habits repeated long enough. That's why consistency matters more than excitement. Excitement comes and goes, motivation rises and falls, but consistency, that's a decision. It's a commitment to show up whether you feel like it or not. It's easy to act when you feel inspired. It's powerful to act when you don't. Consistency builds reputation, not just with others, but with yourself. When you prove, day after day, that you will follow through, you begin to see yourself differently. You begin to walk with quiet confidence, not loud arrogance, but steady assurance, because you know something others may not know. You know you can rely on yourself, and self-reliance is a powerful advantage. Consistency also simplifies life. You don't need to reinvent yourself every Monday. You don't need dramatic resets. You don't need constant breakthroughs. You need steady, disciplined action in the same direction. Direction is more important than speed. If you improve your direction by just a few degrees today, over time, your destination changes completely. That's how small habits change your life forever. They alter your direction slightly each day until you wake up years later in a completely different place. People will look at your success and call it luck. They will call it talent. They will call it timing. What they won't see are the thousands of small decisions made consistently when nobody was watching. The early mornings, the careful spending, the extra pages read, the extra effort given, none of them impressive alone. But together, unstoppable. Here's something important to remember. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be persistent. Missing once is human. Quitting is what breaks compounding. The magic is not in never failing. The magic is in returning quickly and continuing. Consistency forgives small mistakes. It cannot forgive surrender. If you stay with small, powerful habits long enough, they begin to work for you. Discipline becomes easier, focus becomes sharper, results begin to appear, momentum builds, and momentum is one of the most powerful forces in achievement. Once positive momentum starts, it becomes harder to stop than to continue. That is the gift of consistency. So don't look for dramatic transformation. Look for daily improvement. Don't look for overnight success. Look for steady progress. Don't underestimate what a small action can become when repeated for years. Because in the end, your life is not shaped by what you do occasionally. It is shaped by what you do consistently.